Welcome back, everybody, to yet another episode of Risky Business. When we had left off on our story, our party had just fled the dire clutches of Ferret's misguided sister, Cordelia. The only reason they had escaped was due to Gosha's noble sacrifice. As he disappeared behind a wall of smoke, the sound of clashing metal, spell incantations, and roars from Gosha's rage grew distant and silent. Eventually, pure silence filled the empty walls, only broken by the party's footsteps on the stone as Ro led the way through the sewers and secret tunnels leading back to the nest. Bread the bear, carrying both Ferret, who was under arm, and Numpty, who was still in his lizard-like form, silently followed, and was the first to enter the main hall of the hideout. He put Ferret down, only for her to slowly slide down in utter silence, dispirited, to her knees. Not a tear was shed, nor was there a slight sob. She sat there feeling defeated, and as melancholy consumed her thoughts, so did the realization that she had lost yet another friend who she couldn't protect. Ro, who, without a word, moved into the next room, closing the door behind him and disappearing from sight, leaving the party alone with their thoughts. Bread, upon seeing Ferret's sorrowful look, kneeled down and placed his hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry." Ferret did not move. She did not make a single sound. She only stared blankly at the cold floor, despondent. Moments later, Ro appeared in the doorway, breaking the silence, as his footsteps echoed into the chamber as he approached the party. "Ferret, you must leave Chaosity." Ro spoke with urgency and sadness in his voice as he tightened the straps that held his armor in place. Even he was not immune to the loss of a good friend. Crow, filled with anger and discontent, raised his voice and demanded to know why there was so much secrecy. Crow explained that he had trusted his guildmaster with everything, and yet that he was not given the same privilege. Ro decided it was time to tell the whole truth, whether Ferret approved or not. He explained that the Thieves' Guild is not truly what it appears to be. It is an organization that works along the Royal Knights, the very same that Gosha led himself. They would perform assassinations on drug traffickers, slave traders, black market dealers, and any that planned to destabilize the city of Chaosity. Aside from their wet work nature, their job within this organization is to gather information to protect the country from the shadows. Upon hearing this, Crow began to have second thoughts about his place among the guild. His life was at risk constantly now. Why wouldn't he run away? He held no attachment here. Crow went to place his hand on Crow's shoulder, only for it to be slapped away. "Listen, whether you trust me or not is up to you. But you have done so much for this city. You may not know it, but every job you have ever done has always allowed the citizens of Chaosity to sleep soundly at night. They may never cheer your name, but that shouldn't matter. That doesn't matter. As long as you know you have done the best thing for the people, there should be no question about how much you truly care for the city, even if you curse its name for abandoning you. I saw potential and kindness within you. That's why I took you in. You are not just my pupil. You are a member of my family here." Crow, head held low, nodded in agreement. "You know, I've always looked at you as father figure, Owl." Crow let out a small laugh and placed his hand on Crow's shoulder. "Call me Ro." As he began to turn and walk away, Ferret stood up quickly and grabbed his arm and told him to be careful. He gave her a smile and nodded, knowing full well he was going to be putting his skills as the best rogue in all of Chaosity to the test. "I have to make sure the people are safe. Besides, if the Great Horned Knight, Ghost Couldn't find me when we were kids. Cordelia doesn't stand a chance. We need allies, and the best chance at that is to the west. Start with Withia, and from there you must decide your own fate. I will hold the fort here. Get to the village on the west coast and find the barkeep there. Tell him the owl wishes to spread his wings, and they should help you across the sea. No questions asked. Before another word could be spoken, he vanished into the shadows. Ferret hadn't even realized that he escaped her grasp. She stood there, slightly dazed, regretting the missed opportunity to embrace one of her last remaining childhood friends before he headed out to face the harsh challenge before him. Silence once again filled the room as the party stood tired and in need of a good rest. As they began to settle down and sleep, a magical wave of euphoria would lower their guard as some of the party would succumb to an invasion of their own dreams. Bread, the first to fall asleep, would find himself standing in complete darkness. Only the feeling of damp cobblestone under his feet. His eyes would open and close slowly, as if time was altered. But everything felt normal. Upon opening his eyes again, more details surrounding him would emerge. Lanterns, illuminating buildings, a road. A busy one? No, it was night. There's no one on this street. But there are voices, murmuring, talking, judging. A slow blink again. This time, a large building, a lab. Bread's lab. This was his hometown. He remembered. He remembered this was the night of the incident. Bread only took a single step before the upper floor of his lab would detonate, lighting the building ablaze and illuminating the night sky. A single thought, a single word. No. A second explosion soon followed. This wasn't supposed to happen. It was safe to leave the lab. The experiment was stable when he left. What happened? What went wrong? As the memories of his negligence welled inside his mind, a dark cloud of mist would envelop him, removing his vision of the disaster in front of him. And as Bread was having his own nightmare, as was Crow. A mansion, ornate and beautifully built. His first solo job under Ro's orders. He made his way past the guards and maids without being detected. Slowly coming to an ornate door, he quickly picked the lock and slid inside. The bedchambers of this black market lowlife. His target was making his own fortune from a highly addictive drug that had no real benefit to one's health. People were paying absurd amounts of money just so they could get their fix. Crow made his way to the man's bedside and unsheathed his dagger. And in one swift motion, Crow plunged his dagger into the throat of the man. Not a sound was made. A clean kill. As he was cleaning his blade, the lights of the room flickered on. Rogue turned to see a young woman and a small child. The target's wife and daughter. Their faces full of fear, and anguished cries and screaming followed as Crow would crash through the window and tumble to the ground below. Thoughts crept into his mind. Was that man really that bad? He had a loving family. A beautiful wife. A caring daughter. He began to think if future jobs would be similar to this. As this line of work was starting to take its toll on Crow, it began to show. While the others tossed and turned in the night, Ferret probably had the worst of it. In her sleep, she found herself standing in an open field, staring off into the distance. A hand would creep upon her shoulder and spin her around. It was Katya, smiling and laughing. "Come on, there's a whole manor to explore. We can't let Gosha and Ro have all the fun." Ferret would follow her into the building, unable to speak her words of warning, her cries and pleading to have everyone leave. Before she knew it, she was reliving that horrible night all over again. A monster of the shadows would attack Ro without warning, just like she remembered. Katya jumping in to save him, and Gosha pushing Ferret along to get everyone out. The group would burst out of the front door, and before they could make it a few feet, a cry for help. Katya, gripping the door frame on the ground, had tears in her eyes. And before a step could be made, she would be ripped from the door frame and would disappear into the darkness. The door would then slam shut. Ro and Gosha, with every ounce of strength left, had held the Ferret back to stop her from running back to her death. "How many?" A dark cloud would swirl, and Ferret would find herself back in the dungeons of the castle. Gosha's roars of anger rung out off the walls. Demon after demon would fall to his hammer. Cordelia, with a smirk, raised her hand and started casting an unknown spell. Dropping her hand as if she was pushing something down, Gosha would collapse. No amount of struggling or strength would appear to help him up. As he fought to stand, a demon would begin to swing his sword at the now hindered Gosha, and right before the blade would connect, Ferret's vision would be obstructed by another dark cloud. A slashing noise would be heard, and Gosha's cries in pain. Ferret only could assume the worst. "How many must you sacrifice so that you may live?" Before long, the party would all wake and begin prepping to head out of Chaosity. Everyone looked around the room to see if there was anything they could use. Grandpa Barris, simply taking a peek within Ferret's bag, noticed a spellbook, the very one that Ferret took from Cordelia's room before leaving the castle. This book seemed familiar. Barris would then go page by page. Something did seem familiar. As he continued to read through the book, he would realize that he was being absorbed by it, something that he could not control. Something was wrong. Barris closed the book and clutched it tightly as he fought some sort of outside power, successfully fending it off. He looked at the book and remembered something of himself, something before he had died and became the ghostly figure that he is now. Magic was the cause of this. How? He has yet to figure out. Maybe if he could do a little bit more research, then maybe he would find answers. Among the party, Crow also found a very, very nice dagger, ornate in nature, seemed engraved, and came with a note. The dagger belonged to Roe, and he left it specifically for Crow, in hopes that he would find use of it. Without too much more, the party set out to the west. A few days' time would pass. Quiet. No guards. No Cordelia. No demons. Eventually, they would arrive at the small town Roe had mentioned. They would go and talk to the barkeep, mention the phrase, and before they knew it, they were sailing off. Numpty, peering off into the distance, as the boat flowed over the water, as islands passed by. One seemed yet familiar. He demanded that they stop. They needed to stop. That one particular, as he pointed out to another island as they were passing by. They would weigh anchor and go ashore. Numpty, upon setting foot on the island, knew he had put something here. Numpty, who did numpty things, began to retrace his steps to the island. Hour, maybe two, would pass as he would eventually come very close back to the shore they had came in on. He would dig up underneath a tree, revealing a small chest and a staff. He set the chest aside, picked up the staff. The staff was burning, crackling with ember. A crescent moon shape on the head of it, encompassing a small red ruby. As Numpty held this staff, he would lose himself in it. Memories would plague his mind of a past he would long forget again. The warmth of fire. A very comforting one. He would soon remember that this warmth, this comfort, was not of that of a warm hearth, but that of a raging flame. Cries out for help to his left and to his right. His mother, his father, both on massive burning pyres as they were being burned alive. He would find himself upon a pyre of his own. Though it did not burn, it was not painful. He sat there, clutching his staff, and soon a bright light, a warming, calming light, would emerge. Numpty wouldn't snap out of his daze, his party looking around at him. What seemed like mere moments was almost an hour. As Numpty clutched the staff close to him. He motioned to everyone to the chest, telling everyone to take what they need. He does not need it. He only needs the staff. The party brings the chest aboard the ship, and before long they find themselves setting sail again to Withia. Soon they dock their ship into Withia's ports, the capital city. A beautiful city, ornate, gorgeous. Unlike Chaosity with its white marble and purple metallic metals, this one seemed more dark in nature. Their dark stone and chromatic metals very well contrasted with each other. They would soon find their way into a bar, a tavern, if you will. Sitting down and ordering ice cream and various other desserts, they listened in to some conversations. Nothing really came up until one individual, robed in ornate garments, almost priest-like. Soon they began to talk about the happenings in Chaosity and the kingdom of Ferret. Ferret, who did not hesitate, went and talked to this individual. Had turned out that this woman was a member of the Council of Seven, one of the ruling leaders of Withia. Ferret explained the situation and requested as much aid as possible, and before this council member could give her a proper answer, she beckoned them to come and meet the rest of the council, the oracles, as they were called. As they walked into the building, it was clear that they were expected. The lady beckoned them inside, and as she took her seat with the rest of the council, she explained what Ferret had relayed to them. An uprising, one that could destabilize the nature of the world. Many members of the council deemed that this was just a family squabble and should not intervene, while others said that if what Ferret said was true, and this power seeks to control not just the kingdom of Ferret, but the rest of the world, then they would have no other choice. A vote was called and was found necessary that they must prove themselves in combat. After deliberation amongst the party, they agreed. The combat that was determined was a fair 5 versus 5 gladiatorial combat, with guarantee that no one would be harmed on either side. If Ferret would come out victorious, then she would prove herself capable of leading not just her own people, but the others that she would be requesting aid from. As the party began to prepare, you could hear the chanting and cheers of the Colosseum nearby, and it was only a matter of time before they would have to put their mettle to the test.